Hey, we're Adapt. We are a climate club. I'm Josie Tucker, I'm the creative director.
I'm Richard Ashton, I'm the directing producer. And so I guess Matt kind of summed that up well, but Adapt is basically a climate club that uses design, art, and humour to tackle climate change issues, create community engagement, and then provide solutions.
Yeah, so we are freelance designers by trade, but we run Adapt. It's essentially a full-time job as volunteers, so the tabs that you see across the top of the screen are an insight into the chaos into our daily computer screens and lives. We started Adapt because 2 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation going on about the climate crisis, and if there was, it was headlines that looked like this. Essentially blaming individuals, telling them it was their fault, and it was scary and fear-mongering and didn't really encourage anyone to act. So we thought that with our skills, we could maybe do it a bit better. So Instagram is our main tool for communication, which is something we never thought we'd really use, but we realized the power of it through trying to communicate climate issues in a simplistic way and trying to promote action that people can do easily on the spot and by themselves. So basically also giving some kind of meaningful reason for our Instagram addiction ourselves.
So when we launched about sort of a year and a half ago, our first campaign was Don't Be a Fossil Fool. And it was basically like trying to make a fun and sort of sexy way to actually switch to renewable energy, which is normally like switch sites, which are super boring. So we kind of came up with this campaign. We had like print and digital assets, and an interactive website to help you switch, and then like beer mats sort of dotted around pubs around London. So like when your date's gone to the toilet, you can kind of sit there and learn about renewable energy, which is super cool. Oh yeah, so basically, obviously, we do a lot of real-life stuff as well as Instagram, and early this year, we hosted a Prana party with Brainchild Festival. It was basically just a night where everyone could come together, dance, like have a good time, and like subtly learn about climate change. So there was like large-scale planets hanging from the ceilings, video installations, and like chances to switch and different actions people could take, and yeah, it was a really fun night.
One of the things in particular that we did was a shell piñata, so people could beat the hell out of shell. And we thought it was going to go super smoothly, but unfortunately I tied up the piñata with bungee rope instead of normal rope, which meant that the piñata ricocheted around the room, causing a couple of small casualties. So we had the remnants of it there on the right-hand side in our studio. But it did turn out to be the most memorable and talked about part of the evening, so it worked.
So another event we did last month was we did Tate Lates, and we created an evening of climate change speed dating, which was hosted by our favorite drag queen, Portia. And so basically people could come together, like singletons or couples that knew each other, sit down and like work through 3 courses that we provided. So it was questions, role play, and then climate change pickup lines. And hopefully they learned quite a lot, but at the same time, like people who didn't know each other definitely hooked up because they were there for sort of hours. Like, it was really great.
Something went right. So in all these real-life situations that we try and start, or just knowing that people are having these conversations at home or with their family and friends, we thought about making a tool to make climate conversation a bit easier. From our own experience, we're talking to work colleagues or like older members of our family about climate change, and having all of this knowledge and research up your sleeve and feeling like you're just going to boss a conversation about climate change, and then being struck by one sentence which makes you completely lose all of your information and the conversation just totally falls to pieces. So we basically, Rhizo printed these guides for conversation and distributed them around London in pubs and bars and clubs so that if people were feeling a bit at a loss with conversation, they had a guide to go with. So we used characters like your Uncle Tony or your Tinder date Layla as a sort of framework for these conversations, with what not to say primarily and then what to say afterwards.
So this is basically our most recent biggest project. Last month we held an exhibition at the Copeland Gallery in Peckham called Sadness is a No-Go Zone, and we basically set out a brief for loads of artists to respond to create work around climate change. And I mean, the response was like really great. So
We ended up with 50 artists. So initially it was supposed to be a really small project, just getting a bit of a community together and sharing some artwork. And it's completely snowballed. So we ended up with 50 amazing pieces, and we thought, we've got to put on a massive exhibition, which is way bigger than we ever could have imagined.
So what we sent out to the artists were different phrases which we've used over the last sort of 2 years, and then asked them to respond. So we had like a great range of individual pieces, and it allowed everyone to have a platform to talk about climate change, which necessarily they might care about the issue, but not always know when to talk about it or know how to put their design skills to use. So we had phrases like "so so good," which is obviously about renewable energy. "Shall we clear the air," which is obviously sort of working on the conversations around climate change, and then "Most shrubs," which is about rewilding.
So this was the entrance to the exhibition, where we just enlarged this is hand-drawn typography that we used for the branding, which was kind of based on pollution and air particles. And then on the left-hand side, we had an amazing artist called Hannah Dickens, who hand-painted this huge sign as an introduction to the space, sort of asking people to clear the air as they walked in.
So all the phrases that we gave to people were divided into different rooms. So the first room you walk into was about wilding. The reason we chose this to be the first room, because planting trees and looking after the trees that exist is obviously one of the best solutions to tackling climate change. And what we really wanted was, we didn't want the exhibition to be just a poster exhibition of great graphic design. We wanted to include other pieces. So we had trees donated from Trees for Cities, sort of dotted around the space. And then we had habitat boxes designed by this artist called Lauren Davis. And these boxes could be flat packed and then taken away outside of the exhibition to basically create habitats for different wildlife and insects to live.
One of the main factors that we really wanted the exhibition to have was a point of action in every topic, so people could act within the space without having to like text themselves to remember it when they did at home, or try their best to do it later. So we partnered with Ecosia, who, if you haven't heard of them, they're a search engine that plants trees. So unlike Google, who use your ad revenue to enlarge their massive company, they go and plant trees in areas affected by deforestation. So basically, we've got a Plant 5,000 Trees challenge. So we had a search engine in the space where people could search whatever they wanted and contribute to our tree challenge. And also, if they downloaded this search browser through this particular link, they could contribute to the challenge, which is still open. So if you want to have a go, please download it through the link and help us plant 5,000 trees. And the next room that you walked into after wilding was our travel room, because everyone knows that travel has such a huge impact on the environment. On the right, we had our Cool Your Jets posters, which is obviously about limiting the amount of flying that we do. But on the left is our information boxes. So we handmade all of these information boxes to house all this information, because we knew that perhaps sometimes climate change and science stats don't go down so well at events where people are drinking. But these were a way to really draw people into the information, and actually worked really well as a kind of engaging way to educate people as they went through each room. This also, apologies for the iPhone video, but it's a mobile that I made, which is about climate migration. So people are moving around the world already because of climate change, whether it's fires, droughts, heat waves, rising sea level. And this mobile, which was finished literally like minutes before we opened the exhibition, has all of the elements of climate migration hanging in the balance, and it was moving slowly around the space at all times. Another thing that we were a bit apprehensive about doing, but we really wanted to open up the conversation and kind of showcase all of these, the different facets of climate conversation, and like what some people say that we should do is incredibly controversial with lots of other people. So Rich designed this poster about stop having children, which is probably the most controversial suggestion. And luckily, we thought everyone was going to argue us down about this the whole night, but it went down really well, and it actually ended up being one of the most popular pieces. So it kind of goes to show that if you approach a topic with a bit of good humour, it kind of opens it up to more people.
So the last room in the exhibition, which was the biggest room, was the energy room. Because obviously energy is like so instrumental to tackling climate change, from like reducing our carbon footprint, but also it's a topic that a lot of people don't always know a lot about. So we had all the artists responding within this room. So one of the most popular phrases was "so far so good." So these are just the pieces that were on show there.
And on the opposite wall, we had Feeling Hot, 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 which was a good framework for us to talk about rising temperatures all over the world.
This piece at the end here was designed by Will Brindley. That's the big "You Can Frack Right Off" banner, which was 5 meters wide, which replicated the width of the road in Lancashire. And the banner has been given to Frack Free Lancashire to help them in their protests and road blockage to basically stop quadrilla fracking up in Lancashire.
So as Instagram addicts ourselves, we wanted to highlight the importance of social media when it comes to people communicating about climate change. And we see so many sustainability accounts, meme accounts chiming in on climate change. And so we made our own platform called Extinctogram, and we made these huge 3D mobile phones which lay around the space to try and take the piss out of how people talk about climate change on Instagram and online. So on the right is a meme account which is sharing some recent pictures of their travels to the Arctic in 2019. And on the left is like a super woke, sustainable influencer person who's saying, when your crush calls you just to say, mass extinction as a definite consequence of climate change truly is a result of human activity. He always knows what to say. And these were actually made before the exhibition, but were displayed in the exhibition as well. They are my climate emergency posters. So the government actually announced a climate emergency. UK government were the first government in the world to do so. But then they kind of went a bit quiet and didn't really say what they were going to do afterwards. So it was a bit of a moot point. Loads of people were chiming in on what they thought we should do next, and it became a bit messy. So we simplified it down to 6 main points, which was planting 700 new trees, introducing a tax for frequent flyers, changing farming, tripling renewable energy, ending emissions from steel and cement, and banning the sale of petrol and diesel cars, which sounds really boring, and it is kind of boring. So we decided to turn them into something a bit more exciting and engaging, simplify it, and these can be used as social shares, or they can be printed and used as placards, and they're just a way of communicating these issues in a more engaging, memorable, and fun and colourful way.
So we find it quite hard to sum up what we do, because we have to obviously be quite responsive to what's going on, and it's like super complicated. So we drew this diagram to kind of explain it.
Which essentially, we spend our whole days like reading bad climate news and freaking out as a daily occurrence. So the only way to deal with it is by laughing at it and making a joke out of it. And then as designers, the only way to somehow try and make a career out of it is by making the joke look nice before we release it into the world and hope it has some kind of an impact on someone else, or that it makes some kind of difference.
Yeah, thank you.
You.